Hi guys, welcome to my channel. Today in this video I am gonna be explaining a horror film related to police named Body Cam. This movie was released in 2020. IMDb ratings 5.3. In Rotten Tomatoes it earned 46% fresh. Metacritic score 37 out of 100. This movie is written by Nicholas M. McCarthy and Richmond Riedel, directed by Malik Vittal. So, without further ado, let's do it. The story revolves around the police department of Los Angeles. In the beginning of the flick, we see Officer Kevin on night patrolling. He was kind of stressed out as rank and file protested against police brutality on the same date. In the night, he stopped a four-wheeler which was running without driving license. Kevin shouted at the driver and ordered him to disembark from the car. Even he aimed his weapon at him. Being frightened, a lady came out of the car, but suddenly an unknown entity attacked the cop, grabbed him and dished him over his vehicle. Then we see a scenario of 12 hours earlier, where a lady cop named Renee came to her duty. She had been suspended for a couple of days as she attacked a civilian without any provocation. She lost her son in an accident and was suffering from bereavement and grief of the departed soul. Her child fell into a neighbor's pond and drowned. Renee was introduced to a rookie officer named Danny, who was her new partner by police officer Casper. Late night, Renee and Danny were ordered to reach Officer Kevin as he was being unresponsive. Kevin's vehicle was damaged and some blood stains were on it, and his teeth were laying on the car. In the car laptop, Renee found his body cam footage, where it was clear that something invisible perpetrated an onslaught on him. Whenever American cops go for patrolling, a body cam remains installed on their shoulder. The camera records their movements and occurrence and saves the activity in their laptop. Probably it is designed for transparency of the job. In the footage, Renee saw the van and the lady. Later on, Renee and Danny discovered the officer's bloody cadaver hanging on a gate. Later, all the cops arrived at the spot, and Renee told about the footage to police officer Casper. Being surprised, he said that there was no footage in the laptop and the laptop was rigged. But Renee stuck to what she saw on the laptop. Having seen the logo of the lady's pant, she came to know that the insignia was of a hospital. A woman named Anisha Brands was the nurse of the hospital who was driving the vehicle. Renee and Danny were delving into the investigation. They arrived at Tanisha's house that had been abandoned for 6 months. They were checking the house from the inside. The cops were seeking for some clues and evidence, and suddenly a mickle amount of cockroach jumped over Danny. Then we see an entity that was approaching to attack Renee, but Renee escaped from the house in time. Afterwards, Renee was searching more about Tanisha. She unearthed the fact that her 14-year-old boy, DeMarco Brands, met his demise in a city crime, and his killer couldn't be apprehended. On the other side of the town, Tanisha went to a grocery store to make some purchase at late night. Moments later, two local burglars, having entered the store, began harassing the shopkeeper, including Tanisha. One of the thugs was fond of pranks, and he was recording everything with his phone. Outside the shop, Officer Burke and Roberts saw the van of Tanisha. The van matched the description of Renee, and it was without number plate. The cops entered the store for backup. They thought it could be the van of the burglars and interrogated, pointing their guns at them. One thief shot Officer Burke and made Tanisha his hostage. When Tanisha was victimized, the lights of the store began flickering unexpectedly. The thief suddenly began levitating in the air and firing his gun aimlessly. During the shootout, the shop owner and the burglar died. Officer Robert started looking for the nether thug in the dark of the store. Moments later, the thief fell on the ground from above, and he was succumbing to pain a lot. His head was bashed by someone. Minutes before dying, he indicated that entity standing right behind Officer Robert, and seconds later, Officer Robert's face got covered with a plastic bag. Somebody or something was dragging him from behind. Robert started firing his weapon randomly, but he couldn't witness any entity there. Later on, we see that the burglar's mobile phone was recording the occurrence, where Officer Robert was being smothered on the air. Meantime, Tanisha escaped from the place. Later, Rene and Danny arrived at the store in order to investigate. Even then, the van was parked there. They were really terrified seeing those cadavers. Rene found some teeth on the floor and the device of the thief and kept it with her. Later on, the officers examined VIN number of the van. The van belonged to the local pastor. The cops had a theory here that those two miscreants thieved the vehicle and killed Officer Kevin. When Officer Roberts and Burks saw the van parked there, they entered the shop for investigation. When the shootout ensued, they all died. But Rene was dissatisfied with this theory because she knew that the van belonged to a lady. Next day, Rene visited the medical examiner who said that it wasn't a case of normal shootout. Everybody's teeth were plucked off. Rene demanded 5 minutes from the examiner to check those deceased people all by herself. She opened the lock of the phone by matching the fingerprints of the thief. She discovered the video that recorded every action. When she was viewing the video for several times at night, she saw that the black entity was present there. The next day, she met Officer Dario at the funeral of the officers. Officer Dario handled the case of DeMarco Bands. Dario stated that he found DeMarco perished on the street. Probably any gang member killed him. Sometimes later, she saw Danny and figured out that he was apprehensive and staged out for those deaths, and he was becoming an alcoholic. Day later, she went to meet the pastor who the van belonged to. She said to him that the van wasn't burgled, but he himself gave the van to Tanisha to use. Afterwards, the pastor unveiled the truth. Tanisha's one and only progeny, DeMarco, was a decent child. He used to help other children of the church, but he was deaf. He had no communication with any gang. The pastor said that after the demise of her child, Tanisha was completely broken. She went off the grid. The pastor gave the address of Tanisha that was in an old factory to Rene. Rene discovered multiple articles written on DeMarco on that very location. She found Officer Kevin, Robert, Burke, Casper's photos distorted and taped on a page. Even she saw her and Danny's photo taped on a different page. Being frightened to see those photos, she called Danny to meet her. Danny agreed, but he didn't show up. Later, Rene went to his house to meet. She found the door was opened, and she unearthed Danny's dead body inside the bathroom. He committed suicide. Having seen the body, she burst into tears in grief, and she also found Danny's suicide note that said, "I'm sorry." She further found a flashlight which contained his body cam footage. 2 weeks ago, Danny, Dario, Roberts, and Kevin were on patrolling on the territory when they received a news of gang war. They alarmed everybody on the site. From the same location, DeMarco was returning home. As he was unable to hear, he couldn't comprehend the warning. He kept walking on his way. Officer Dario, having considered him a gang member, shot him. Just because he was swarthy-skinned, the cops thought he was a criminal. It was evidently a matter of color bar or racism. When the officer came to know that he was deaf and not a member of any hostile party, they didn't save him. Officer Dario stated if the guy survived, they will be entangled into a fake encounter issue. That's why he slayed him by strangulation and labeled the case as an ordinary city crime. All the officers also compelled Danny to smother the case. Rene, having reached to the old plant, summoned Police Chief Casper and elucidated everything. But shockingly, Casper proposed that he knew everything since well before and closed the case. In time, Officer Dario showed up there. He asked for the footage from Rene. As Rene refused to hand over the footage, he fired his gun on her. But she remained unscathed for wearing bulletproof vest. Suddenly Tanisha appeared there and was eavesdropping their conversation. Tanisha threatened Officer Casper that her child won't spare him. And here the mystery is unraveled. The black entity who was slaughtering the cops was none other than DeMarco himself. He was avenging his own homicide. DeMarco abruptly started bashing him and broke his teeth. In this moment, Rene and Tanisha headed for the factory, escaping from Dario. But Dario pursued them. Later, the ghost of DeMarco brutally attacked Dario and gave him an egregious death. Afterwards, Rene informed the station and called for backup and shared the footage with all. When she sat on the ambulance for going to the hospital, she witnessed the entity of DeMarco and her own son in human form, implying they got salvation and ready for afterlife. Officer Rene testified against Police Chief Casper and he was pronounced imprisonment. The movie is concluded here. So, it was the story of the movie Body Cam. The plot is really straightforward. It is the story of US police savagery, brutality, systematic racism, and struggling with bereavement. The flick is filled with suspense and thrill, which I liked too much. And I can only hope that you liked this video. If you wish, you can take down your opinion on comment section. Well, that's all for today. Thank you.